guys, it's Ian at SS8000 and welcome back to the channel. Today we're having a look at the Porsche Cayenne Coupe. Now, it's very interesting really in some ways how they've managed to call a large SUV by the name Coupe. But in essence what they've done is they've cut off some of the hatch at the back to provide a sloping roof and a bit more of an aggressive rear end with a small diffuser and a shallower window is probably the best way of describing it. I quite like it, surprisingly. I didn't think I would. Now, the Cayenne in question is the base model, which is the 3-litre V6 pumping out 335 brake horsepower. And really the question for me is it enough to justify its name as a premium sports SUV? Because obviously this is the way that Porsche sell all of their cars. Sports cars with performance that handle maybe not quite like their mid-engine cars, but they handle in an appropriate way for the name. I think it's quite a good looker. And I must admit, you obviously are going to lose some of the rear boot space because, as you can see, the roof tapers off. So instead of literally coming from the front of the car straight to the back, you can see that it's starting to slope from the front door pillars, really, the point at which the front doors end. This one's got 21-inch rims, 315 on the back and 275 on the front, so they're huge tyres. Sports exhaust. Somebody's had the good sense to debadge. I do love the exhausts. I think the exhausts are absolutely tremendous. Good looking, and it makes a nice rasp, has to be said. However, it is still an extremely big car, and there's no getting away from this when you're on the road. Now, the 3-litre V6 comes with Porsche's PASM system as standard. This is the system that makes sure the car has a sort of a sporty setting, known as Porsche Active Management System. Helps with the roll of the car. And when you have this car spec'd with the air suspension, it's very, very effective, because I've driven the main Cayenne SUV with air suspension, and our Panamera has air suspension as standard. So very effective in both absorbing bumps. I mean, you know that they're there. It doesn't take them out completely, but equally it provides that sort of balance between sporty handling and tremendous body control. Without the air suspension, which this one is not specified with the air suspension, I'm not so convinced that it is quite so good at taking out the bumps in the road. However, it's undeniably good at preventing and limiting the body roll. One of the main attributes of the car is the steering. The steering is just fantastic. So precise, easy to place, and even although the front end really is the point that goes wide first, so it runs wide at the front end first, but it's very predictable. You know what's happening. It's really telegraphing back to you exactly where the car is on the road. That's something that a lot of SUV manufacturers, from Audi to VW, are not brilliant at doing. And even the Lamborghini Urus, which I have also driven, the steering feel is not great. They're obviously from the same stable, the Volkswagen stable, but the steering on the Cayenne is really second to none. One of the things that I've always loved about Porsche is they engineer their cars. You know, there are a number of ways of going when you're selling cars, but Porsche, they spend their money on engineering and making the car as good as they can possibly get. Brakes, perhaps, maybe a downside on the car. The brakes are a little bit spongy for me. I mean, I suppose it's all relative, but I find that you're not quite sure how hard to push the pedal to modulate to bring the speed off. So it's a consideration, but obviously you can opt for ceramic brakes should you choose. I'm sure they probably are second to none. 8-speed automatic. Unlike the Panamera, which is a twin clutch system, this is an automatic converter, and it's excellent. You know, it provides smooth changes, and it's very easy to use. And in sport, they're fast. The car changes gear incredibly quickly. And is it better than the dual clutch system? No, I think I prefer the dual clutch system actually, because when you're on it, the dual clutch system gives you that sort of race feel. The changes are almost done before you've clicked your paddle. But you know, this is very good, and as you're probably aware, BMW, even in the M5 and the M3, they've gone for torque converter automatics now as well, even on their sportiest of models. So the torque converters are obviously getting better and better and better. And my understanding is that the torque converters are actually lighter than the dual clutch systems. But if you do take your car on the track, my own personal opinion is you can't beat a really good, well-developed dual clutch system. And Porsches are second to none. They are the best in the business. They're the best out there. So I suppose at the end of the day, whether you choose the coupe or whether you choose the standard SUV is a matter of choice. I mean, it depends on how much stuff you want to get in the back. I'll show you in a second. I don't think the headroom in the rear is particularly compromised as a consequence of the sloping roof, because it's quite a high headline anyway. The diffuser is very basic on this, flat underfloor to an extent. They've put the Porsche, excuse the dirt on this car, but they've put the Porsche sign behind the plastic where the lights are, which is a great idea, because it's such a pain on the Panamera to have to try and clean round the lettering. You never get it quite perfect. I mean, you can see here, absolutely huge rear tyres. So if we open the car up, standard key, it's keyless go this. Open the car up by pressing the open button, unsurprisingly. And this one is very nicely spec'd. It's got the 18-way adjustable sports seats, and I haven't had the car out for a long drive yet, but I've just on the short distances I've done, it's incredibly comfortable. I also quite like the two-tone leather. You know, I'm not sure how practical this colour is for everyday use, but I do like the contrast between the sort of the whitish tinge of the main leather on the seats, and then the sort of the bluey grey that they have on the top of the doors and on the centre console and on the dash. As seems to be the way with all new cars, they're trying to get away with providing fixed glass roofs, which I know gives a slightly lighter air to the car, brings in light from the top, and I suspect if you're a rear passenger, it's nicer. But I'm not sure I totally see the point of them. I mean, if you're going to have a glass roof, it's better if they're able to be opened, surely. And I know that they went this way with the Taycan. You can't buy a Taycan with an opening glass roof, as far as I'm aware. So I'm just not sure I see the point of it. I know you can close up the so you've got a cover that comes across this when you don't want the glare from the sun, and actually the glare from the sun is not really a big problem, but I don't know. I think I'd be more likely to not bother with the glass sunroof if it doesn't open. And as you probably know, our Panamera does have an opening sunroof. I don't know whether this is the way that Porsche are intending to go. moving forward, and I'm sure it's cheaper and easier to put in a fixed glass sunroof, but I just don't think it looks nice. Of course, the opening sunroof does rob headroom, so I guess you should be given the choice. I think on the Cayenne you are given the choice between a fixed glass sunroof or an opening sunroof, so my advice would be go for the opening sunroof if you want a glass sunroof, and just leave it alone if you don't. So it's a lovely environment here. So if we start her up, if we put the ignition into one, it's very, very, very similar to the Panamera inside now. However, this has the latest version of their infotainment system. I think it's rather good. I do. It's easy to operate, easy to manage. Very clear. Love the large screen in the centre of the car. And everything has a predictably solid feel about it, as you expect from Porsche. They have not compromised their build quality at all. Now, one of the things that I don't know whether you're aware of is that Porsche make the most profitable cars. So per car, Porsche are making more profit than anybody else in the industry. So not only have they managed to be extremely profitable as a company, but they've managed to keep their standards and retain the engineering effort that goes into each car. I know to an extent that these cars are at the higher price end of the market, and certainly since Brexit the prices have increased. I'd say at least 10% on your average Porsche, if not a little bit more, which is a bit hard to understand, but it does seem that that's the way of life now. Prices are escalating in all areas, and I guess cars, we're not immune from that in the car market, car manufacturing. Anybody that is familiar with the latest generation of Porsche dash layout will be familiar with this car. I mean, this is exactly the same as in the Panamera. So you have the little cut through here from standard to sport plus, and then everything is touch button on the center console. So we want to go into media, we press media, sorry about that, climate, navigation, car, everything is set up. It can be very slightly annoying if you want to prevent the car from cutting when you're driving in traffic. You've actually got to go into a screen to press the stop button here. I can't imagine you'd be bothered about this spoiler on a car like this being up. I tend to leave it down, let it do its own thing, or at least we do in the Panamera. Yeah, it's the trouble with these touch screens. But I think, this is about the best in the business in terms of touch screens available, and I must admit it's very impressive. I have it generally in the first setting on the suspension dampers, so you can have your dampers in different settings to your drive modes. As you can see, I'm running this in normal at the moment, but actually, so I'm running it in sport at the moment, believe it or not. Sport on the chassis and normal in the drive mode, but sport in the drive mode is quite a good option as well. Just makes the gearbox change a little faster, allows you to hang on to your revs for a little bit longer, and it's just a beautiful place to be. So if we nip out and sit in the rear, there's great room in the rear, as you can see. Now here, what I'm going to do is try and show you the headroom. Now I'm 6 foot, just a little under, if the truth be known, and I'm quite close to whereas in the front there's masses of space above me, but here I'm quite close to the lining on the roof. So, you know, maybe a 6'4" passenger might be a little less comfortable. Actually, for me, it's absolutely super. And then you can see at the rear how the roof line literally drops dramatically. So you have a much smaller window in the rear. But actually, from the front, you can see everything you need to see, and they're large mirrors in the car. So consequently, it's really nice. Really nice, really nice. And again, give you an indication of how smart the dashboard is from the rear. And we've got the contrast stitching in this car, which I rather like as well. One of the things that I didn't tick on my Panamera was the contrast stitching, which I wish I had. But however, you know, that's where we are. Few controls on the roof between the passenger and the driver, but nothing really dramatic. It's just a very nice environment. If we come out, the usual in the on the main dashboard, we've got an analog rev counter, as is the way with Porsche, and everything else is digitized. So if I put it on, I can scroll. You can scroll through. I think we might need just to start it up for a second. So if I scroll through, sorry, just go back. If I scroll through the main screens, the two dials on the right hand side become the navigation system, so you don't have to have the navigation system on the central screen, and then everything else is pretty standard Porsche fare. It won't show you the split between front and rear. Four-wheel drive car, of course, won't show you the split between front and rear when we're actually stationary. Tire pressures as well, and then back to the start. The other thing, of course, which is nice is just you sit that much higher in the Cayenne than you do in the Panamera. And I think, you know, it is a consideration, because I think it gives you a slightly better view of the road, and consequently gives you just maybe a little longer to make a decision about what's happening in front of you. So if there is going to be a problem, you just get that extra second to decide what to do. This one has the black piano wood, which I think is actually very nice. I mean, I slightly prefer the trim in mine, which is the carbon fibre, but you know, this is perfectly acceptable, and this is standard, whereas the carbon fibre trim is quite a bit extra. It's a slight problem with Porsches that the extras cost a lot of money, but I think most manufacturers have gone that way. So on this side we can open the boot. It's got despite the fact that we lose the roof line, so you can't get as much in the boot as perhaps you would. It's the usual fold down seats, they go flat, and it's a nice big space. And under here, as usual, you haven't got a spare wheel anymore, which I think, you know, I'd much rather have a spare wheel myself, but what you have is a little pump that you can obviously pump up the tires, and you've got foam that you can insert into the tires if you have a puncture. I mean, I had to do it on the GT3, and it is absolutely no fun trying to inject the foam into a tire that's losing pressure. So not an easy solution. But once I'd done it, and the foam was injected, actually it was quite effective. It stayed up, even although it was a really nasty nail in the side of the tyre. Managed to get me home from where I was and to the tyre, well actually to Porsche in Guildford, who replaced the tyre for me. So how to really describe what the Cayenne Coupe actually is? I mean, it's a styling exercise, and quite frankly it doesn't add, dynamically it doesn't add very much extra to the main SUV Cayenne. But I think it's a little different. I think it's beautifully put together, as they all are, and I just think ultimately it's maybe just a little bit more stylish than the standard car. And if you don't need the roofline going all the way to the back, I think I'd probably choose it. Looks a little more aggressive, doesn't it? Guys, I just want very quickly before I go to show you the engine compartment. I wasn't going to show you, but I know you guys do actually like to see round the whole car. Truthfully, there's nothing very much to see, but I think I would not be right if I didn't actually show you what the engine looks like. If I can find the catch. There we go. So there you go. It's the Porsche 3 litre V6 in all its glory. Actually, maybe in none of its glory, and it's just a plastic cover. But then you expected that. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Catch up with you next time.